And here we are. We're live again.
Awesome. Welcome. Welcome, Claire.
Hi, Kirsi. How are you today?
Hi. Doing amazing. How are you doing? Happy New Year. Happy New Year, everyone.
Thank you. Happy New Year to you too.
Welcome.
Glad to be here with everyone.
2023. And
Whew.
today we are going to talk about an important subject. We were just talking about, like, why is nobody really talking about this?
Mm,
It's,
yeah,
like you said,
it's real.
thousands of years old.
Yeah.
Phenomenal that happens.
Yeah. It's funny. I was just sort of sitting the other day and I was like, hey, we should talk about this in our life because I was sort of experiencing that myself. And I was just sort of realizing I was projecting my own stories and hurts and fears and whatnot onto somebody who was completely innocent and like they had nothing to do with my past and stories and things. And I was like, wow, like look at what I'm doing to this person or like to myself, really, right? And I was like, okay, we get to talk about this because everybody does that all the time, and it
Mhm.
just affects our relationships, it destroys our relationships, so anyway, today we want to talk about the topic of emotional projecting. So basically we're projecting our own feelings or fears or whatever, well, fears are feelings obviously, onto other
Mhm.
people, onto situations that may resemble something that we have experienced in the past, or something that is familiar to us and that is unpleasant. And so we create something that perhaps wasn't there at all. And, if you sort of project something onto another person, then obviously it's not going to feel very nice to them and they're going to have a reaction. And then, we're sort of co-creating something which is probably not very, in flow and not very sort of smooth and pleasant. And, and sooner then you have a huge sort of domino cascading effect, and your relationship with said person is sort of falling down the stairs. But
Mm.
anyway, see, I think you have a little definition of projecting.
Yeah, I do. It's from Google, and it says protection is the process of displacing one's feelings onto a different person, animal,
Mhm.
or object. So this happens subconsciously. I don't notice when I do this,
Mm.
but I can think back and, oh my goodness, I think I was raising my kids with projecting a lot of stuff on them.
Wow.
Yeah, that hurts. Ouch.
Yeah.
And I believe this is beautiful to bring awareness to this, because the more we actually think about it, the more I have now thought about it, the more I start picking up, oh my gosh, when I was angry, I might have been worried about something. I might be worried about money, or something else might have happened. And I was in emotional turmoil.
Mm.
Then I projected it on my kids. Maybe one of them just, wasn't feeling very good. And then I have this going on and I start projecting, and I can't really be present when I'm projecting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what it is, really, right? When we're projecting, we're sort of somewhere else, right? Like when we're projecting something from the past. So we're basically in the past. We're not in the present. We're not sort of being with sort of open and like perceiving what's occurring right now. We're like, oh, this situation reminds me of that situation. And so you're transported back to a moment in the past when you were hurt or scared or abandoned or angry or humiliated, and you're sort of projecting those fears onto the present moment and sort of not seeing, yeah, what's occurring right
Yeah.
now. So thank you so much for sharing that, Kirsi. I would suggest we, if you're open, that we dig in a bit deeper into that a little bit later. But perhaps
Mhm.
first, I would like to sort of just outline a little bit more like what it is and how it occurs to like everybody listening. um maybe just sort of wondering, like, why would we, like, what does that even mean? Like, what are we projecting? Like, what's the deal?
Right.
So I guess to start with, just like a little outline or introduction. So we believe that when we're, throughout the course of our lives, and especially when we're children and we're sort of very impressionable and we're very dependent on our caretakers, on adults and people in our lives to take care of us, um, we are very impressionable, as I said. And so something unpleasant or scary happens that threatens pretty much our existence. And this can also happen when we're adults, but usually there's like an imprint from childhood, because if you are a little child, if like there was a possibility that your parents or your caretakers abandon you, or that they ignore you, like, that is literally life threatening to a little child because they can't feed themselves. And so this response, like survival, existential fear, like protection, strive for survival mechanism, reflex kicks in, and it's like, okay, like this situation was life threatening. It was really scary. My parents ignored me, or they left, or I was
Mhm.
hungry, I was scared, I was alone, and it felt life threatening. And so I need to make sure that I will never, ever, ever get myself into a similar situation ever in my life, because it was unbearable, it was horrible, and I could have died. And so when you have this young system, it's so much for that nervous system. They just need to, like, any way possible, I'm going to create a strategy. I'm going to make sure that if anything slightly similar happens in the future, I'm going to recognize that. I'm going to see that red light, and I'm going to be like, okay, like, I'm out of here. Like, this is not happening. Like, I need to protect myself. I need to, like, nip it in the bud. And so that's what happens, right? And then we sort of reinforce that and recreate those situations, because the more you sort of, like, you enter a relationship and you're like, you're about to leave me, like, don't do this to me. And then this person is obviously angry, or like, they don't like it, right? If you start attacking them.
Mhm.
And so they're going to sort of react, and then they might actually leave you because they don't like your behavior. And so you're sort of recreating that pattern. And so what happens, what projecting really is that we've been hurt, for example, in the past, or we've experienced some intense fear, or some, I don't know, humiliation or frustration, or something unpleasant. And so when dealing with another person or a situation we sort of feel uneasy about, or we're not sure what the other person is thinking or what their intentions are, we start getting so anxious that
Mhm.
we start projecting our own feelings onto
Yeah.
them. We sort of start seeing them in a light that, they might not sort of, it might be something that they're not even thinking about, but we start sort of imagining that, that's, for example, where jealousy comes in, right? When you're like, people like crazy, like jealous partners see, like, oh, you're doing this, like, you're totally cheating on me, or you're like doing that,
Right.
and they're not doing
Right.
anything. It's just, this hurt is sort of manifesting all these like visions and fears in the other person.
Yeah. Usually there's some unwanted emotions and traits that a person has. Like you said, they may be well ingrained from the past. And every time that kind of situation pops up, those kind of same emotions come on, and then they don't feel comfortable. So subconsciously, we allow we allow the other person to have them. So we project all of that, and there is that disconnection
Yeah.
because the other person could be totally oblivious to what is going on. And I have those things happen to me many times.
Yeah.
I know I project on other people, but I know I have been on the other side so many times, just past week. And it leaves me with that feeling of like, wait, what just happened? Like, I'm totally disconnected to what you just said. I'm
Yeah.
totally disconnected to how you're seeing this situation.
Yeah.
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 So I think on the underline, there is a like a search for that connection from that. Let's say I'm projecting, I'm still looking for that connection. I feel so uncomfortable with what's going on inside of me. So I'll try to place it on you, maybe hoping that there's some kind of a magical resolvement comes to this whole thing and we find connection. But it doesn't, of course, happen that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Chrissy, I'm wondering, you just mentioned that it just happened to you recently that you've had other people project onto you. So I'm just wondering if you would be open to share some of those experiences with us, so that we see, firstly, sort of like how unpleasant or misplaced it can feel when somebody's projecting onto us, to sort of see the impact of how somebody, projecting onto another person, how it can like destroy my sort of trust in them, like my sort of, connection to them, like how I can start, just like, yeah, stop basically trusting in that relationship and lose connection because I don't know what's going on with that person. And I just sort of feel, I guess, attacked, right? Like, or yeah,
Right.
so, or
Right.
misunderstood. So if, and then perhaps once we see, how that feels when somebody projects onto us and sort of understand the weight of that, then we can go on and sort of share more like how we project, so to give people examples, like what are all the subtle things that we project onto our family members and friends and partners and colleagues.
Yeah. So I have this long-term thing that has been happening. My mother is, I love my mother. So, just giving an example of our relationship. Now, when she was a little girl, they didn't have a whole lot. So she learned that money is scarce and you need to save. And all those are beautiful values. Saving is a beautiful value, of course. Now, she, from when I was very little, she started protecting that lack and lose, even if you have money, the fear of losing that money. So it's been like a constant protection. Like I've almost have felt like I haven't been able to have space and create my own relationship to money because it became so strong from my parent, and the fear, the worry. And so I'm feeling what my mother is feeling. And when I grew up like that, I don't know what I'm feeling about money myself. I'm just feeling what she's feeling because she trained me to feel what she's feeling.
Yeah.
So I don't get to grow into that unless I have this awareness and I start taking steps and I start asking myself questions, that what is money to me, like going down to the nitty gritty of it. So that's one example that I have. And that is so interesting that even though I'm of age, I have my own children who are of age already, and definitely we're taking care of our own households and things like that. But just a few months ago, my mother got so angry at me because I had traveled somewhere and her whole thing was like, Kirsi, you don't have money for this. And it's like, well, first of all, maybe she doesn't know how much money I have. And she doesn't, of course, she's not my accountant.
Yeah.
So she had no information that she based that claim on. What she based it on was her own fears and her own relationship with money. So it becomes like she came on so strong that it was very surprising to me. And I was like, oh, wow.
Wow.
Yeah. So I actually got very disconnected in that conversation because I didn't really expect that, she would come that strong still about it. But those are very ingrained things. And if we don't bring the awareness to it, they will continue.
Yeah.
We will continue to project.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good example. I mean, that's very strong, very powerful, huh? Like, I mean, and I feel you on that one because I mean, I have the same sort of story growing up, with parents who grew up themselves and lived in communism and certainly didn't have a whole lot, and that scarcity is just so ingrained that it's something that I'm still sort of struggling with, that just like it's not even, it's not my existential sort of survival starvation scarcity trauma, but it because it was projected onto me so heavily. It is mine. It's like so sort of visceral in my system that it's like like I'm gonna starve, or like I don't get to spend those few bucks on a coffee or whatever. It's like it's so illogical, right? Because I didn't grow up in like an actual scarcity or like
Mm.
lack, but it was like so present in my home growing up that it's such a huge part of of my experience, right? Because it was projected onto me so much. So that's, I guess that's one, like that's like a very integral sort of all encompassing environmental example of projection, I would say, right? Of like somebody's sort of
Yeah.
viewpoints, and so that's that's a lot when like that's a whole sort of worldview that, and I mean we all have that, I guess, from our parents. Like we're all sort of get impressed with like
Something.
conditioned or cultured with a set of viewpoints. So, and we get that right like for life, and then it's up to us to sort of sort through and start approaching it critically as adults. Like what do I want to keep, what do I not need as a belief, as a expectation of the world and how things work. But then I would also like to talk about like the day to day, being like projected onto. So like for example, I have an example with a work situation in the past when I worked with a colleague who, or kind of actually a superior who, wasn't all that was quite anxious in the work because, he was new to that position and sort of new to the area, and the work was very stressful, right? Because there were so many things that were difficult that, he wasn't getting from his superiors and that he had to figure out, and things weren't functioning. So it was very understandable that this person would feel anxious. But then I sort of started noticing this person was projecting sort of his fears and like
Mm.
l- lack of confidence in his capacities, and I think even like lack of confidence in maybe even his entitlement to the position onto me and
Mm.
other people. And I think there was this like lack of sort of self-assurance that like like feeling like, oh, I'm like the leader of this group or whatever, so I should know all the things, right? And then this person probably didn't feel that way, that he knew these things, and so they started projected onto me and other people that like they knew everything, and sort of even like pushing for like
Mm.
proving that they knew things and we didn't, to sort of show off, like to sort of make themselves feel better, right? And sort of like, and so like
Mm.
I would come up and ask a question. It's like, hey, are we supposed to do it this way or that way? And then they would sort of like attack me back and be like, no, you said you're supposed to be like this, and I never said this, and you said this, and I'm right, sort of. And I'm like, I never like attacked you. I never tried, like, I never wanted to be right. I never wanted you to be wrong. Like, I just had a question because I want to know what to do, right? Like, I want to do it right. So I just asked because I thought maybe like
Wow.
I thought you knew, right? And then this person is just projecting all like his fears that maybe, I want to like prove him wrong. I want to sort of destabilize him. I want to destabilize his authority, his position, or that I even want to like, or that like somebody else maybe wants to take his job, that we're sort of like, it's crazy, right? And it's like, well, this certainly doesn't feel nice. Like I never tried to destabilize you. I never tried to sort of, prove anything to you, or prove to anyone that, I know something better than you. Like I don't care.
Right. Wow. That's a great example. And it kind of brings us to a little bit of a deeper uh in look of what is happening, because then those people who are projecting the unwanted, in this case inferiority, they were afraid they weren't actually that skilled for the job, so they flip it. Now it's you who is not skilled, and they get to be the, they actually start lying, so there becomes a twist to that whole relationship.
Yeah.
And that same thing I have experienced in an intimate relationship, when when a man has actually been very insecure about themselves in that relationship, and their insecurity has gone to start, well, okay, maybe I'll just, maybe I just won't be with her, maybe I'll be with other people too, then I don't need to feel that insecure, I'll be more confident because I'll have this going on over here. But the protection comes in when they start, like he started, like doubting me. Every single turn I took was like, oh, why did you call that person? Or why did you look at him like that? So that's a very strong protection. And I had no world going on like that at all. So I was, again, dumbfounded. It's like, what's going on? Without understanding about these things.
Yeah.
Either, like you said, it kind of can get a little bit crazy because there's such a disconnection that happens in that relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, and these things, I mean, as I think, and these things happen with friends, with family, but I think they happen most in intimate relationships. Like for example, so common that you have a couple where one of the partners has experienced abandonment in their childhood, and so then they end up with a partner who often travels, for business trips, right? And every time before they would leave for a business trip, like the wounded partner would just lose it, and they would start screaming and like, why do you always need to go on business trips and you leave me behind, and God knows what you're doing on your business trips, and like you don't care about me, I'm not your priority because you're always out of town, and it's not fair to me, and your job is more important than me. And what's happening is that, this person has been so traumatized by perhaps a parent like making them, and not necessarily abandoning them, but just, maybe the parent was ill or died, or had to also travel for work or whatever it is, but the child experienced abandonment, right? And it hurts. And so then later in life, like they're still so scared of being left behind because it just triggers all these old feelings of like they don't care about me, like I'm here left alone and I don't know what to do, and they're just gone and having fun and I'm here alone, right? And so, and it's, you're just projecting onto the other person because they're just, they're doing their job, like there's communication, but then every time they're about to leave, like this partner just gets crazy, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah, yeah. So these are really difficult things. And of course, open communication helps, vulnerability helps, and just how we learn to become aware of what's really going on here and taking ownership of this. In other words, we're all looking for safety, and when we are in a fight or flight, no, most of the world is, in other words, people within themselves are not feeling safe. It's really hard to recognize these things that are going inside of us when we're not feeling safe in here. We like to go somewhere else where we don't feel safe. So I would kind of want to, maybe if it's okay with you, to start turning into like what can help in this situation? How can we help ourselves? How can we help our relationships? Because it really seems and sounds from these examples that people involved are not, nobody's meaning harm. It's just a deep wounded hurt, or another, maybe not even that deep wounded, but just an an experience that is still kind of unresolved. They didn't have support. Like my mother, she was brought up right around wartime. It was a lot of losing and a lot of lack going on, and I'm sure she saw and experienced so many things around that.
Yeah.
So there's many unresolved that never got resolved in kind of like in her childhood. Now she's well off. The thing got fixed, but what she felt inside, that was not, that has not been supported. There was no presence when she was experiencing those probably maybe horrible things too around the lack. Maybe she didn't have food, maybe she had to go to bed hungry, and she'll remember that for the rest of her life. So to bring awareness to all of that, of course, is one thing that helps, and that's what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
What do you think is other things? What kind of tools could we offer here for each other and our listeners around this topic?
Yeah, it's obviously a very, very good question. I think it's very complex and there's many things we can do, but I think for anybody who's listening and who really wants to, improve their relationships, I would say the first thing would be to really just get really honest with ourselves and like ask ourselves what really irks us, what really bothers us, who are the people that really sort of trigger us, and chances are it's going to be either a parent or like the opposite sex, and why, right? And like what, and so I think number one would be like, look at something that you want in life and you don't have, or that you want to improve but you can't improve, or that just like a situation or a relationship, or just something in your life that you see there's a lot of friction. And then ask yourself, what are my beliefs about that thing? And get really honest with yourself. And so I can give a very personal example. Like once I was like prompted to ask myself about this question about different areas of my life, and I was like, oh, like I don't have a relationship and maybe I would like to be in a romantic relationship. And then I asked myself, like, what do I believe about relationships, and what do I believe about men, right? Because if I don't have a man in my life, then maybe I have some beliefs about men. And then I was shocked to have like this whole list of things, like, first with like a relationship, I thought like it would tie me down, like it would limit my freedom. I would have to make compromises. Like, I don't like to share my space. I don't, this and that. And then it was like, what do I believe about men? Well, I believe they're all egotistic, like they don't really care about women, like they're like this and that, and just like so many things, right? And I was like, whoa, like no wonder, that I'm not in a romantic relationship with a man, because I really don't want a romantic relationship with a man, because I think all men are horrible. I think, I don't know, I think, most men are abusive and they don't like women and this and that, and relationships are just oppressive and they'll take away my freedom and I won't be able to travel like I do. And I was just like sitting there like, whoa. And so this is what I'm projecting onto not just all potential partners, but onto all men pretty much, right? And so the other thing that I would offer also that we've like haven't spoken about yet is if I'm constantly projecting something onto a person or a group of people or a situation, it could be my money situation, it could be my mother, it could be all men, it could be all my bosses, like people of authority, if I'm constantly projecting something onto them, such as my mother's always trying to control me, or money never works out for me, or I don't know, all men are, assholes or whatever, like how much space, like, am I giving them space to show up in any other way?
You're filling it up. You're
Right,
filling up the
like
space.
subconsciously we're gonna manifest some sort of a situation that every man's gonna act to us like an asshole because we're gonna prompt it, or that money's gonna escape from us because I'm gonna prompt that, like, I'm gonna do something crazy and money's gonna just like leave
Mhm,
me because I'm gonna do something that's gonna, push money away or lose the money. Or
mhm,
if I'm
mhm,
projecting on my mom that she's trying to control me, then like no matter what she says, she can say hello, and I'll be like, Mom, you're trying to control me. And then she's gonna try to control me because she's gonna think I'm crazy, right?
mm.
So I guess that is just to say the first thing, yeah, would be to
Mm,
really just get clear and like do your own work. Like start with yourself, right? Like just get clear because we're so oblivious to these things. Like we don't even know about like what our beliefs are and what we're projecting onto everybody and everything else. And because we don't want to know, because it's embarrassing, it's shameful, it's painful, it's like makes us feel like stupid and angry at ourselves. And why would I think that? Why would I feel that way? Like, I don't even want to know that somewhere deep in my brain or, body, I feel or think that way. So we're not even conscious of all these beliefs and projections and feelings. So I would say step number one, like take out that journal and just like get really, really honest with yourself.
yeah, that's great. That's amazing. I love that. And that's where the self-knowledge, we talk about self-knowledge, and this is foundational. What is going on inside of us? What are my stories? So it's really important to know our stories. They can be painful, but just like you said, stop, take pen and paper, or just stop, look and listen, and ask questions. Like you said, ask, what do I believe about this? And that's the kind of like the flip side of this is the beauty in the relationships. It comes out on these places of friction because there's so much information. Like with me and my mom, a friction comes. I get to ask questions. No, she gets to ask questions about myself, and she asks about herself, and then we can talk about our relationship. But then we have content, because now we kind of like go into these issues and we just like boo 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 blah 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 without having that self-knowledge first. So we really don't bring any content, which is ping ponging, these protections actually, and how they affect us. What does it make us feel? Because it does not make us feel good when somebody's projecting onto us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So you nailed it, right? So I described step one, and then this is step two, right? Like once you have some sort of clarity, then you only need to gather the courage to then have a conversation, perhaps. You know, I mean, if you've already been projecting, I mean, and it's not always necessary to have a conversation, but it can
Mm.
be good. It can be,
Yes.
if and so here it comes to integrity, and here it comes to like taking ownership and taking responsibility. If you really want to be in charge and be responsible for a relationship, like it takes immense guts. But if you do find that courage and you step up and you approach the other person and you say, listen, I want to apologize. I've been shitty. I did not know any better. I've
Mhm.
been projecting onto you because, I have this and that belief, I have this and that experience, and I just tend to flip out. I just tend to, I don't know, be it an abandonment wound if you leave, or, if you flirt with other women, jealousy wound, right? Being cheated on, or, I have issues with all other men, or all other women because, I don't know, my mother, my father was like this, or I was abused, or whatever it is, right? Or because maybe your parent was abused and they again like projected all that, burden, sort of don't trust the other sex because whatever, right? And so it can
Mhm.
be anything, right? But like if you know you've been projecting onto somebody else, and you've had arguments and it's been impacting your relationship, like I think it can be very, very beneficial to sort of just get very real and talk about it.
Yeah.
And, on the other hand, like we don't always necessarily have to talk about it. Like, we also get to do our own work, and I mean, depends how much damage has been done, right?
Yeah. And I think, before that talk, it's really important to get clear yourself, like get
Absolutely.
clarity, and also
Absolutely.
bring like, hey, what is my stuff? What is my stuff and what is not my stuff? Like taking responsibility of my own stuff. And in the end, if you're projecting something on me and I take it, that's my responsibility too,
Yeah,
because I don't have to take it.
that's
So
right.
the more I know what's mine, the more I can, protect myself and just to energetically allow it to, they used to say, let it go in from the one ear and out from the other. So
Yeah.
we don't have to take everything what other people are projecting onto us. So what would you say about that? Like, how would you, in a situation where you realize, okay, I'm having this conversation now with my boss or whoever, and they're clearly projecting, like, I haven't even said anything, I'm just realizing that this is what's happening. How would you deal with that situation?
Yeah. I mean, I think what's really tricky is that if they're projecting onto you, that means that they're not grounded, they're not present, they're triggered. They feel unsafe, they feel uncomfortable. And so if you try to reason with them, it's not going to help anything. You're just going to aggravate them even more. You're just going to trigger them even more. They're going to get even more angry, even more unsafe. They're going to project even more.
Right.
So I would say at that moment, I mean, it depends on the context of what they're doing, if it's really harmful to you, right? Like, if it's really a lot, if it's harmful potentially, like you can always just withdraw yourself from the situation. You can say, listen, I'm sorry, like this does not resonate with me. That's not something I said. That's not something I did. I never said these things. And I don't agree. And I do not want to be a part of this situation or this conversation or whatever. I don't have anything to say to that right now. And you just sort of politely withdraw yourself, and you sort of make sure that you're grounded, and sort of wait for them to calm down a little bit.
Mhm.
Um, or maybe if it's not that, burning, if it's not that dangerous, I guess, to sort of be, in that situation and have them go on with whatever accusations or whatever they're projecting onto you. I guess you can just sort of be kind of neutral and just not say much, and just sort of find your core, find your center, find your ground, and just remind yourself, like, okay, they get to be angry. They get to be
Mhm.
scared. They get to have their own perfect experience of this situation, this reality. And I honor their experience, and it has nothing to do with me.
Mm,
Not
I love
responsible
that.
for their feelings. I'm
Yeah.
not responsible for how they feel now, for whatever, reaction was caused to them. I'm not responsible for how they react to my reaction to them. They're
Mm.
responsible for themselves, and I'm responsible for myself. And if and I think what's most like sort of tricky in these situations is that when somebody starts yelling at you or projecting onto you, like it's so easy to get triggered as well because it's unfair, right? Like somebody's yelling at you, somebody's projecting onto you, they're being unfair, they're being aggressive, you feel
Mm.
unsafe, you feel triggered, right? And from that
Right.
place of trigger, we start to like, like we sort of forget what's ours, what's not ours. Like we maybe even believe them, like depends on our system. Some people just get really angry. They just want to fight back, right? Some people are like actually like, oh my God, like I am really guilty maybe now. Like I feel ashamed. Maybe I did something, even if you didn't do anything. But
Yeah.
some of us have so much shame or so much like self-blame in our, sorry, not
Yeah.
so much guilt in our systems. We feel like we're constantly causing harm to other people. So it can happen, right? So that you're like, oh my God, like, did I do this? I didn't know, like, it's my fault. So it can happen to many, many people, right? When somebody's just like full on, like, boom,
Oh,
boom, boom,
yes.
throwing stuff at you.
I
And
mean,
so I
people
would
go to
say,
jail. People go to jail every day because somebody projects something on them and they just flip and they can't handle it. But what you were saying there was so important. Finding the core, getting centered, getting grounded, finding your feet, and
finding a
just
breath.
finding your breath.
And before you
Yes.
say anything, before you sort of start believing your thoughts, just being like, okay, this is happening.
Mm.
I'm here. I'm still
And I
here.
love I love
And
what you said about, I mean, while I'm saying this and we're sitting here, I'm like, oh God, please let me next time act like this. Like I want to take these tools with me. You were saying that after you find your core, your breath, your center, ground, you realize that other person is having their experience and
yeah,
they're entitled to that experience. So there there comes a shift like right away because that other person will actually feel the space that is given to them in their protection. They are We are allowing them have that moment, we're allowing them to have that space, and we're differentiating ourselves from that because we understand through our own self-knowledge and for stopping and just being centered that this is not our stuff.
yeah.
So then we may have those feelings of doubt. What if this is my stuff? So maybe we can
Or
then
what
just,
if this is my responsibility, right?
right,
What if I really caused this person to feel that way? Now they're feeling shitty. Oh, it's all my fault. I'm such a horrible person.
right. So we can choose to go that way, or we can choose to give ourselves time. Like we can choose to say, in all that centeredness and giving the other person their space to express themselves, we can say to ourselves, okay, let me figure this out. Not right now. Not right now. Let me give myself a couple of days to figure out what's really actually happening here. So in that way, I gear myself from reacting into that situation and kind of going along with that protection. So that's just what came through to me. I really am really happy about this conversation because I'm like, wow, maybe some of this will shed onto me and I'll try this, in my next conversation because these are so common. Just children. Children's feelings are so authentic. They don't know how to regulate themselves. So they're constantly looking for that that co-regulation, and they project onto us all the time, all the time, which is totally natural. But for us adults, we are to learn to do better and not to project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have, thank you so much, Kirsi. I just noticed we have a question from Chris at the comments.
Mhm.
She's asking, how do you distinguish between a projection and someone just having an awkward love language? So that's a fun question. So I would say, so I believe that the energy behind what's being said or done is always like the distinguishing factor. And I am convinced that all of us as humans have the innate ability to perceive energy. And as children, we're so perceptive, like if we feel everything, like people don't have to speak, we just sort of, like children or animals, right, they just sort of sense like if something's off. And like then we sort of get told like we should like only believe in like the rational stuff, and like only trust our senses, and like there's no sixth sense and things like that. And so we like start losing it because we think it's not real, we're told like it's not real, but we still all have that ability. And so I would say you can sort of sense when something is off, or you can sense when something is like psychological warfare, or when somebody's like energetically like like, or like holding on to you, like if that's like don't leave me, right, like there's like this element of toxicity if somebody's like projecting onto you. It just feels kind of icky, right? Whereas if somebody has an awkward love language, like yes, it's gonna feel awkward, but it's not gonna be like I feel like this person is like trying to like rip my like flesh out and like hold on to it or whatever. Like it doesn't have that like grabbing like existential like I need to get away because this is unsafe, or like something's terribly off here. Like I just feel like there's like a visceral feeling to like when you're being projected onto, because there's like some core like wounds sort of involved when the other person just really doesn't feel safe.
Right. And we can talk about maybe the other person is not clear on what's theirs. So it's kind of hard then to interpret what is coming from another person. So it's very, we talk about the self-knowledge, and meditation is beautiful for that because it really teaches you to be with what is, be with yourself. So I would really just echo what you were saying, that there is when if we're talking about a protection or a not so common love language, there's energetic difference between those two. So love language versus protection is the love language, the person is still, centered, peaceful, and they have kind of grounded, there's a certain groundedness in them. But when you are projecting, like we said earlier, there is this attachment, that there is a sense of not being present, that there's a thing that we're talking about.
There's like this like trying to like somebody's trying to catch you and like hold you accountable for something, or catch you before you run away. There's this like
Right.
kind of energy behind it, right? Like whereas
Yeah,
like if someone's just awkward with their love language, it's like clumsy, like but it's not like
right. Yeah. Hope that helps. But a lot of these things, it's called discernment. You learn with experience. We experience relationships every single day, all the time. So we you know, awareness is a beautiful teacher. When we start asking these questions, you know, like, I love this conversation because it's bringing so much awareness to this topic. That is a daily topic really. I don't want to project onto other people because it's not fair. It's not fair to you if I project onto you, because that catches you totally off guard. It's not in your experience, and you can't really join my experience because I'm forcing it up on you. So it's hard to kind of, you know, safely join that.
Yeah, I guess like to sort of start wrapping up here, but I guess what I would sort of say to sort of start closing up, like what I can also offer as sort of a way to start working on these things would be to, I mean, we already spoke about getting clarity, but to also sort of give people more space to show up in a different way. And
I
just,
love
or like
that.
you could call it like give people the benefit of the doubt, or
Mhm.
just sort of just, I guess, like, being the bigger person, you could even say. So
Mhm.
because sometimes people change, right? Like we all have bad habits, we all sometimes tend to be neurotic or this or that, and maybe we decide to change, and maybe we really change, but the people that we've known our whole lives are still going to be like, oh, what are you pretending? Like, we know you're so neurotic, or we know you're always late, or we know you're always cheat on your partner, or whatever, right? Maybe you've really changed, but they're
Mm.
still, and maybe this was the truth about you in the past, but now you've changed. But all these
Mhm.
other people keep on projecting onto you what you used to be, and so they're not wrong, they're not projecting something completely different, right? It's not their stuff, like it used to be the truth, but now
Right.
they keep projecting it onto you, and it's not nice. And it's like they're not giving you the space to become somebody else, they're not giving you the space to grow. So I would
Mm.
offer also, right, like just sort of, if you really struggle in a particular relationship, and oftentimes it can be our parents, right? Because we've known, or our family, we've known each other our whole lives. Like there's just so much, we know each other so well, right? And there's past hurts, and so like we just like maybe a few times like mom hurt you, right? And it like really hurt, like you felt controlled or you felt whatever, and maybe she doesn't do that anymore, but now
Mhm.
you still feel like like, and so like, what if I decided to be the bigger person, and like give mom more space and be like, okay, what if I stop believing that for a second, that she's doing this or that? What if I just try to see her in a different light? And trust me, it's extremely difficult.
Mm.
It's very
I love
difficult.
that.
It takes a lot of ground, like a lot of your self practice, like a lot of knowing yourself, and
Mm.
just like maintaining presence, and finding ground, and again and again and again. And maybe you're gonna have that intention, and maybe the first 20 times you'll be like, today I'm gonna be really grounded, I'm gonna let mom do her thing, and I'm gonna give her space and not project onto her. And the first 20 times you'll be like, oops, I did it again. But just like practice and find the ground
Yes.
again, and remember again and again, right?
Yeah. I love that. I love that so much. Wow. That just really touched the core. I know we're kind of coming to the end, so I'm just kind of trying to figure out whether I'm just gonna, maybe we'll take a little drop in into the end here. And yeah, so just becoming very aware of your body right now and where you are, where you're sitting, the seat,
Mhm.
your feet, and just kind of bringing the awareness to feel how the feet are touching the floor, how that seat is giving support, and finding the breath. Just being with your body. Maybe there's some sensations that you're feeling. Maybe there's a shortness of breath, a bit of anxiety on the chest. Just know that you're safe. And just know that those are sensations that come and go. And if you have been feeling anxiety a lot lately, just being with it, accepting it, breathing into it. Maybe asking somebody to sit with you in quietness while you're feeling into it. And so many of these things that we have talked about today, they have really been birthed in the incubation of our childhood. The stories, and same with the other people's stories. So we're all just really experiencing not just this present moment, but we're experiencing a lot of past moments, even when we were very, very little. And we just say that that's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And just know that you're not alone. None of us are alone in these experiences.
Mm.
Mm.
Thank you, Kirsi. That was beautiful.
Mm. Thank you. It's beautiful to feel that collectiveness of humanity.
Mm. Yeah. Very grounding.
Mm.
I think we needed that. A lot has been sad and stirred up.
Mm. Yeah.
It's needed to sort of, it's like digesting after a big meal. Just sort of take a deep breath and let it settle.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, especially nowadays when we have so much going on. So many things that we could do and pay attention to.
Yeah.
Let's not forget ourselves.
Yeah.
Every time we do that, what we just did, I believe it increases our self-knowledge. Every time I learn something new.
I love that. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Kirsi, for sharing your wisdom and your gifts with us and for this lovely conversation. And I thank everybody for joining us today or for listening to the what's the word, replay. And I wish everybody a lovely, lovely start of 2023 and a wonderful year ahead. I hope you appreciated my little festive lights today. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, Claire. I loved it.
Bye bye.
Bye, everyone.